Hello and welcome back to CEO.CA's Inside the Boardroom. My name is James Fatham and today I'm joined by Adrian O'Brien, Director of Marketing and Communications at Midnight Sun Mining. Adrian, it's great to see you today.
Absolute pleasure, James. Thanks for having me on here.
So let's kick things off with a bit of background information for our viewers. Can you give us the elevator pitch for Midnight Sun?
Sure. So it's important to understand when you look at Midnight Sun where we're working. I think there's a lot of market understanding now as to this looming deficit of copper that's taking place and that's on the horizon. But there's only a couple of places in the world that are really the ultimate location to be finding deposits that could have a global impact. So we're working in an area called the Domes region of Zambia. So we're in Zambia. You've probably heard about the Zambian Congo copper belt. It's a very, very prolific region with dozens of big deposits. But we're in a specific area that trends east to west, and it's a part of that Zambian Congo copper belt. And the big differentiator is the deposits that surround us. Not only is there every major mining company you could imagine, Rio Tinto, Barrick, First Quantum, Anglo, now KoBold Metals because we're working with them. And then just north of us, of course, Ivanhoe and China Molybdenum. But every deposit that surrounds us is 1 billion tons. So if you're going to be hunting for a major target, this is the ultimate jurisdiction to be doing so. And it's very mining friendly. 75% of their export earnings are copper. This is a mining centric country that is doing what they can to move these projects ahead. So we are working there. We have this very large project and it's broken up into 4 pieces. So if you kind of imagine, if you took this 506 square kilometer property, broke it into 4, each of those 4 pieces has the potential to host one of these 1 billion ton deposits. And each of them has a unique geological system underlying that would drive the opportunity to do that. And so if you look at our property, we've basically taken the tack that we're trying to bring in either different parties for each piece or funding those on our own. And of course, that's what we've done with KoBold Metals at a target called Dumbwa. And then now we also have a plan with First Quantum up to the north on a property called Kaziba. And so we kind of have this situation unfolding that is truly the best of both worlds. That's something you hear a lot in the mining sector. It's a bit of a buzz phrase and it loses its impact a little bit. But in this particular situation, it's as real as it gets.
Yeah, it's certainly a very exciting story, especially a property of that magnitude, exploration on such a large scale in such a prolific area with some of these very impressive partners coming in as well. I want to talk a little bit more about those 2 targets you just mentioned, the Dumbwa target and the Kaziba target.
Yes.
Can you tell us, there are 2 separate agreements in place for exploring these with KoBold Metals and First Quantum. Walk us through the backstory there. How did these deals come about? And what's the upside for investors in Midnight Sun now that these deals are in place?
For sure. So first off, good job on the pronunciation. Those are tough. So let me start at Dumbwa first. I think it's easiest to walk through what we've been focused on for really the duration of this company's existence. The company's been around for a long time. Been around for 11 or 12 years. Might even be a little more than that now, 12 or 13 years. And we've been working on these large SEDX targets. SEDX targets can be differentiated by the fact that they're shallower, they're easier to move to production than a traditional porphyry deposit, particularly if that porphyry is deep, because it comes with such a high capex to get it into production. And so, we've focused on these targets for a long time, but as much as the prize is very big, these are very technical targets. They're difficult, they're large, just in terms of the scale of each of these targets, very, very big. And they've never been approached in a fully systematic way, but we do have discoveries on every single target we have, significant discoveries, high-grade discoveries. And so the property we have called Dumbwa is in the southeast corner of our project, and it's a very, very large property. Each of these is quite large on its own, but Dumbwa in particular has got a lot of attention over the last couple of years, and mainly around 2 things. Number one, we've done quite a bit of work there, a lot of geophysics. We've done a lot of geochemistry and a lot of sampling. And if you look at that property, we've actually defined a 20-kilometer long soil anomaly, which is massive. I mean, it's almost unheard of to see something that large that has a footprint at surface. And across that soil anomaly, we've actually got ore-grade copper in soil. Again, unheard of. That's not something you typically see. You typically see kind of trace elevations in the copper numbers that indicate that something's going on. But in this case, we're actually getting ore grade in soil. And when I say ore grade, we're getting 0.73% copper. The typical operating grade at the mines that surround us is around 0.59, 0.58, 0.59. So significantly lower than what we're seeing at surface. So what does that tell you? It tells you there's a big system there. There's something going on. We don't know the extent of it yet, but we know there's something going on. The other thing that we've seen there is vegetation kill zones. So these are areas where, if you can imagine, Zambia is quite lush, it's quite green. These are areas that nothing can grow. So we're seeing what we thought originally were agricultural issues. There is a lot of agriculture in the region. But as it turns out, these are actually caused by underlying sulfides that are so high grade that nothing can grow. So again, very, very compelling. And then if you look at that anomaly, it actually tracks just south of our boundary, and where it crosses the boundary to another property in the south, that property is owned by a major, and that major drilled that property about 1.5 years ago. They drilled that anomaly to test it, and they were successful. And so we have, an economic intercept that has real impact in terms of the region and telling people that Dumbwa is real. But we have these other compelling features as well. And based on all of that, we had KoBold Metals come to the table. We had 3 or 4 different groups this past year. We did have numerous offers, but KoBold was the group we went with. And we went with them for a couple of reasons. Number one, they're backed by some of the biggest names in the Silicon Valley. And that is the first time you've seen that in the mining sector. Traditionally, you don't see Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos or any of these people coming into mining. But KoBold has managed to attract them. And they've attracted them for a couple of different reasons. Number one, they're using bleeding edge technology. And number two, they're going after the absolute best projects with the very best team. And so Bill Gates is a major investor in KoBold. And then he has his Breakthrough Energy Ventures Fund, which of course, Jeff Bezos, Richard Branson, Jack Ma, it's a literal laundry list of the who's who from Silicon Valley. And so we knew that we would get lots of market traction based on that level of interest and the fact that those people are behind it. But more importantly, their team is absolutely second to none. So it's run by, their copper division is run by David Broughton. David Broughton is arguably the top copper SEDEX geologist in the world. He discovered Kamoa-Kakula for Ivanhoe, which of course is just north of us, but inside the DRC border, which has its own own challenges. But that deposit is 1.4 billion tons at almost 3% copper. It's an absolute monster. So David found that. He also found and did all the development work at Kansanshi, which is First Quantum's flagship asset and located right beside us. That ties into the First Quantum thing when we get into that. But David has a track record of immense success. He also assembled the ultimate team. So if you look at KoBold, they have something like 200 geoscientists working for them. They have 65 PhD geoscientists that are specialized in copper. There is not a team on the planet that compares. It's amazing. And David has handpicked these people. And so we've always wanted David to work with us. We've known David for a long time, and we knew he was interested in Dumbwa. But this was an opportunity to have David run our program and to try and repeat the success he had at Kamoa-Kakula and Kansanshi. So absolutely phenomenal. And then lastly, what we really wanted to make sure we did was we wanted to isolate each of these targets and make sure that we weren't giving the entire farm away early on. And so we did a deal with KoBold that allows a 75% earn-in for KoBold on Dumbwa alone. So we have Kaziba, Crunch, and Mitu. All 3 targets have similar potential, lots of upside, lots of discovery potential, but we retained those 100%. So it's an absolute win-win situation for us.
Great. Thank you for that overview. And with First Quantum and the Kaziba target, what's the structure of that deal?
So this is a really interesting situation that developed. You'd have to track back about 2 years to kind of fully understand how this came to be. And of course, without looking at a map, I'll try and kind of draw the picture for you. That northern section of our property sits about 6 or 8 kilometers away from First Quantum's Kansanshi mine. The only major thing that separates the two is the town of Solwezi, which, because of mining in the region, has grown from 1,000 people to 75,000 people in the last 10 years. So it gives you an idea of what's going on there. But First Quantum's Kansanshi mine has a really interesting structure as far as how they operate. And of course, they're the top copper producer in Africa. So they are very large. It's a billion ton deposit at 0.66% copper. And they've built an amazing facility there with actually 3 circuits. So you have a circuit that does the sulfide ore, so the main sulfide deposit that they're working on for SEDEX deposit. That material goes into a sulfide circuit. Then they have a mixed circuit, and then they have an oxide, SXEW circuit. And that comes into play very specifically for their copper smelter. So they have probably the most efficient copper smelter on the planet. And that smelter actually produces about a million tons, 1.3 million tons of sulfuric acid a year. Now, sulfuric acid has long been used in the mining sector, but unbeknownst to a lot of people, it is a big environmental liability. But it's also the main component for heap leaching. So any big heap leaching gold operation or anything uses sulfuric acid, and it's traditionally your biggest cost. So First Quantum, you have to give them full credit. They thought about how to tackle that, and what they came up with was actually using oxide copper. So oxide copper is the material that's near surface, so in the top 50 meters of stratigraphy. And typically it has different metallurgy, so you can't run that through the same circuit that you're running your sulfides through. And they figured out that if they take the sulfuric acid that they're getting for free from their copper smelter and they heap leach that copper oxide, that they would not only neutralize the acid and get rid of that environmental liability, but they would also unlock an entire revenue stream. And that revenue stream earns them 200 to 400 million a year, which is incredible. So the problem has developed in that over time, they have run out of copper oxides. They've depleted their supply at Kansanshi, and there are no other copper oxide supplies in the near vicinity. So we've had a conversation going them for probably 2 years around the imminence of using copper oxides on our property to deliver to Kansanshi and keep their oxide circuit running. And so what's happened over the last 6 months, 3 months, really it heated up in March, was a discussion around the timing of that. And basically, they've made it clear that they have now depleted their oxide supply. They need material and they need it quickly. And we have, if you look at our drill results, we've actually intercepted oxides on 2 different parts of our property and a lot of it. And so what we've been discussing with them was doing a joint exploration plan where we define resources of oxides on our property that could easily be destined for Kansanshi. They have a haul road in place, runs right through our property, runs right to the Kansanshi gate. So it makes nothing but sense. And so what we've done is we announced a cooperative exploration plan, and we've basically decided to work together to define those resources as quickly as possible. And we have a large footprint at Kaziba and an area that's very high grade. They typically run 0.3% through their oxide circuit, might even be as low as 0.2%. We think the material at Kaziba is going to be significantly higher grade. Our intercepts so far are in the 3 to 5% range over good widths, 15 meters, 20 meters, very impressive. So we've defined a program. We're going to drill about 150 holes, all reverse circulation. And First Quantum is going to take care of both putting forth a geological team as well as defining a drill plan for that target. And then they're going to do all of the metallurgical testing and assaying at Kansanshi to save us cost and save us time. And we think together we can define material and have that built out and ready to go to Kansanshi inside of 12 months, which is a huge near-term cash flow situation for Midnight Sun if we're successful. And then we have another property in the south called Mitu, which has a footprint, that's about 3 to 4 times the size of Kaziba that we're going to attack with exactly the same purpose in mind. So it's going to be busy and exciting with First Quantum.
Yeah, it's a very interesting deal. It sounds like, a lot of upside for both parties there with infrastructure already in place at the project. And an interesting, pursuit of minimizing those environmental impacts as well.
Absolutely.
I do want to talk about the recent appointment of Kevin Bonel, previously at Barrick, lots of experience in the region.
Yeah.
How do you see, his addition to the team helping to advance these projects forward?
For sure. Well, I mentioned that we brought David Broughton on. David was somebody that we wanted to have involved for a long time. But the other fellow that we've always had our eye on was Kevin Bonel. He's an amazing geologist. We met Kevin through Barrick. Kevin was working with Barrick for the last number of years at Lumwana. So beside us to the west, if you look at our property position, of course, I mentioned Kansanshi. First Quantum's asset is right beside us. Then on the other side of our property is Barrick's Lumwana mine. And Barrick's Lumwana mine, again, is 1 billion tons, but it averages about 0.55% copper. So a little bit lower grade than Kansanshi, but still a phenomenal deposit. And Kevin was really instrumental in developing Lumwana. So Lumwana struggled for a long time. Again, as I mentioned, these are geologically complicated deposits, so they can take a lot of work and a lot of time to really unravel. But Kevin was brought in specifically to look at Lumwana and how to solve that issue and how to define resources that could give them forward-looking production, for many decades if they were successful. And Kevin is responsible for a host of deposits in the region that he made the discovery on. He's been very, very successful and basically has focused his entire career in sub-Saharan Africa. So this is his wheelhouse. This is what he does. This is his focus. And the Domes region of Zambia has a number of deposits that are basically he was responsible for discovering. And so when he joined Barrick, in 24 months, which is an incredibly short time frame, he defined 25 years of reserves at Lumwana. So he's basically set Lumwana up for success, stayed with them for 2 years, and Kevin has now joined Midnight Sun as our Chief Operating Officer in Zambia. He'll be a part of the team. He'll be joining the KoBold geological team. He'll be representing us and of course, joining me for a lot of interviews and things. He's a phenomenal geologist, and as I mentioned, this is his wheelhouse, and he's just a tremendous asset for us. So we're really excited about the fact that he's joined, and he's a big believer in Dumbwa. I haven't mentioned it yet in our conversation here, but KoBold has basically assigned an analog to Dumbwa. So they think that this looks like Lumwana's or the Lumwana deposit, and Kevin shares that. So he shares that thesis. He thinks that they're geologically similar, not identical, but definitely geologically similar, and shares their enthusiasm for that and their feeling that is what we're looking at here. So it's incredible. We just keep building the team out and attracting top-tier talent. So.
Yeah, certainly quite the catch to get somebody with that much local experience, and sounds like there's going to be a lot of work cut out for him, and it's going to be a very exciting time there, advancing all of these targets further forward. I just want to have a quick overview. When we're looking ahead throughout the rest of the year, what else can people expect from Midnight Sun? What are some kind of upcoming catalysts or potential news releases people can keep an eye out for?
Sure. So there's a few big things to look out for. Obviously we're working under this cooperative exploration plan with First Quantum. So moving that forward, developments there are going to be critical. Getting our drilling underway. So we look at July as being an extremely busy month for us. We're in the midst right now of contracting drillers, getting everything set up at site. And our plan is to start drilling at both Kaziba with First Quantum and Dumbwa with KoBold. And so those are probably the next two big catalysts for us, for the start of drilling. And then once we get that drilling underway, it's going to be very busy, and it's going to be a very newsy year for Midnight Sun, which is, I think what people have to look forward to is development. We're going to get this project moving. At Dumbwa, we're going to see if we do have one of these billion-ton deposits. The deal with KoBold has been built in a way that, it's a $15.5 million earn-in. That's a magic number for a couple of reasons. That gives us 40 to 50,000 meters of drilling. And if you look at every deposit in the region, that's roughly the amount of drilling it took to get them to critical mass. So we're going to find out what's at Dumbwa once and for all. And if we're successful with our goals with First Quantum, we could be in a situation where we see cash flow as early as next year at this time. And that's something that a lot of companies wave their arms about. But for us, it's a very realistic goal. And we're working with one of the biggest companies on the planet for what we're doing. So it's going to be a super exciting year for Midnight Sun.
Well, Adrian, looking forward to more of those updates throughout the year. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Awesome. Appreciate it very much. Take care.